All right, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rob Abowitz from the Office of Residence Life.
And my name is Brian Woodruff from the Housing Options, Meals, and Events Office, the Home Office.
Thanks to Mark Pontius and from the Parent and Family Programs Office and the Division of Student Life for setting up this webcast. Mark will be reviewing your questions and passing to them us to address after our brief presentation. Please use the chat function. For some of you, it's in the top of your screen. Others might find it in the bottom right corner of your browser. You can use that to submit questions. Also, there will be a recording of this posted. Where are we posting it? On the Parent and Family Programs website at Miami University. All right, we've got a lot to cover, including room assignments and changes, my card, and all the details for move-in day. Brian is going to begin.
All right, thanks, Rob. Well, as you know by now, many of our students have been sent an email notifying them that the room assignments are finalized. We are continuously sending assignments on a rolling basis. So if your student hasn't yet received their email assignment letter, don't worry. We are still working diligently on those, and we'll be continuing to send those out on that rolling basis. So if you haven't received it yet, make sure your student is checking their Miami email account. It's very important. In that email, there will be information about logging into MyCard, which is where students will conduct much of their business related to living on campus. This website called MyCard will show them their room assignment, mailing address, the dimensions of the room, their roommate information as well. Also, in the email that they receive, it will include their arrival time for move-in day so that they know when they are asked to arrive. Something else that we'll be able to do on MyCard, and they can do this now if they'd like to, is to make any changes to their meal plan account for the upcoming semester. So we do allow students to change their meal plan for the upcoming semester. Once the semester begins, you cannot change it any longer for that semester. But at this point, up until the first day of fall, they can select a different meal plan level if they're interested in doing that. We will like to talk for a minute about room changes. As your students are getting their assignments, they may have questions about that or thoughts about the room they're assigned to. So at this point, the room assignments are considered final for the time being. However, with certain tweaks, certain circumstances, such as ADA compliance and some other issues, we may have some changes. But if a student wants to make a change to the room assignment without a very special circumstance, such as one of those, they will need to wait until the second week of class, at which point then they could work with the resident director to request a room change for any reason that might exist. Going along with the room information, I'd like to point out that there will also be online opportunity for students to submit repair requests if there were to be anything wrong in the room as the semester goes on, if something were to break or there's an issue they needed help with. We'll have an online process for that as well. For early arrival information, there are a few things that we do suggest that students do prior to arriving on campus. The first is communicate with their roommate. So even if the roommate is somebody that they know, they still should communicate with them about what items they would each bring to campus. We don't want them to duplicate items. You don't need 2 microwaves, for example. They can begin the process of building that respectful relationship with that regular communication starting now. We encourage that. What to pack? Obviously, students, if they're not already, will start packing for college soon. So there's 2 websites that I want to draw your attention to. The first is the housing website, which is where you would find a link for frequently asked questions. This page answers the questions like, what should I bring to campus? As well as it also has information about the regulations to on-campus living and a list of things not to bring to campus, things to leave at home. Of a particular note is the complete restriction from bringing any candles, incense, candle warmers on campus. Don't bring any of those things. Even wickless candles and wax warmers are not permitted. we want students to avoid the $500 fine issued by the Oxford Fire Department for anyone who possesses a candle on campus or who tampers with their fire safety equipment. So that's a fine that it's not Miami University that issues, but the Oxford Fire Department. So it's very, very important that no candles or any of those things that you're seeing would be on campus.
Okay, now let's talk about move-in day, which is most students will arrive on campus on Thursday, August 23rd, 2018. Students who live in Emerson and Hahn Halls should move in on Wednesday, August 24th. We do this to alleviate traffic in, 22nd, I'm sorry, on Wednesday the 22nd. We do this to alleviate traffic in 2 areas of campus that have typically experienced significant backups in the past. As Brian stated earlier, students' arrival time was noted in their email from the home office. If you're not sure, the chart listed here shows, well, let's get to that. There we go, arrival time. The chart listed here shows their general arrival times on campus on move-in day. And this helps us speed up people moving in so we're not all stacked up on top of each other during move-in day. When you get to campus, the plan for move-in day is to get you as close to the residence hall as possible so you can unload your vehicle. Students will go inside to check in while family members unload the vehicle. Then you should immediately move the vehicle to parking away from the residence hall so others can pull in and unload. Do not leave your vehicle unattended. Let me go back to the move-in plan again. You will have access to maps shortly. By the middle of next week, you'll have maps loaded on a website we'll show you in just a minute that will give you directions to the closest parking for your hall. All right, assistance. On move-in day, there may be volunteer upper-class Miami students and physical facilities department staff available to help you move your belongings in. Now, whereas we can't guarantee that you'll receive assistance, there will be hundreds of students and staff helping across campus. After your vehicle is unloaded, you must move it to remote parking. In almost all cases, there's free parking in designated areas or garages a short walk from the residence halls. In some cases, there'll be a van shuttle all day to take students and families back and forth to remote parking. Again, please do not park adjacent to the residence halls. Vehicles are not permitted to block any dumpsters near the residence halls while you're unloading because the dumpsters need to be emptied several times on August 23rd. You can help with recycling by not putting empty boxes in the dumpster. Rather, collapse empty cardboard boxes and neatly pile them behind the dumpster to be picked up by campus recycling. Most of the dining halls will be open when you arrive on campus. Students may begin using their meal plan on that day. Family members are welcome to pay cash or credit card at the dining halls. We'll also have hydration stations outside the buffet dining halls where we'll give away water on move-in day so everyone stays safe and hydrated. Many parents wonder about the schedule on move-in day and when they should plan to leave campus. Students should be ready to join their corridor meeting for dinner on Thursday, August 23rd around 5 p.m. and mandatory hall meetings begin at 6:30 p.m. followed by a corridor meeting. Campus-wide social events continue that evening for all new students. To help you avoid unnecessary damage and charges, please follow these policies when setting up your room. Only use putty-type Plastitac or S-hooks to hang things on your walls. The use of Scotch tape, masking tape, duct tape, or any product with self-adhering strips is prohibited because they damage the walls. Even products that advertise they're damage-free have caused damage and are therefore not permitted. We want you to avoid being charged the fees associated with repairing the damage. We want to encourage you to visit the website displayed here, which includes answers to frequently asked questions about move-in day, and maps that show the traffic flow for your specific residence hall. Feel free to print your map for your hall and bring it on move-in day. Just so you know, those maps just came to me from our colleagues in physical facilities, so I hope to have them updated today. If not, they'll be updated and published by mid next week, so you can have a close-up of your area and see where to pull up, where to park, and just to make the day go better for you. Finally, before we respond to some of your questions, we wanted to mention a few tips for an easy move-in day and a successful career living on campus. The first is to employ patience. We have years of experience with move-in day, but as you know, when thousands of students and families are arriving on the same day, we'll encounter bumps along the way. We have a lot of staff and desire to get everything worked out, and we appreciate your patience. Students should arrive ready to experience new situations and new people. And this doesn't mean that they need to be bubbly and outgoing, just be flexible and open to their new life on campus. It may take some students longer than others to feel perfectly comfortable, and our staff are here to help if any student struggles to get connected. Students should be ready to learn. As we discussed during orientation this summer, we do not see the residence halls as a haven from learning, rather another context in which student learning occurs. And finally, anytime you or your students encounter a problem that you cannot resolve on your own, please reach out to us. The staff in the home office and the resident directors and resident assistants in the residence halls are here to help. All right, so that's the content that we had for you. We wanted to give you some basic things. Now we're glad to respond to your questions. Again, you can type them into the chat box in your screen, and we'll take your questions as they come in.
All right, so we've got one about meal plans, and the question is, if I change the meal plan and it's to a more expensive meal plan, how do we cover that, and what if it's less expensive? And so what will happen is, if you do change your meal plan before school starts, we'll update that in our account, which would then trigger a change on your bill with the bursar's office. And so you would either have an additional charge owed or a credit to your bursar account in that case. It usually takes, from the time you make the change, between 2 and 3 days for that to make its way onto your account, which you'd be able to see when you log into your student's account through the one-stop.
All right,
okay.
Mark's writing feverishly. We've got another question coming to us.
Okay, so the question about parking. Approximately how far away is the remote parking after drop-off?
So in almost all of the areas, the parking is a short walk. I'm talking 2 blocks. If you're talking about an average city block, 2 blocks from your quad or from your area. Even on Western Drive, where we don't have massive amounts of parking, there are a few small lots that are available to you to use that day. But if those are full, then you would park the students that are loading up into Western Drive halls. They can park at Dittmer Field, and we'll have a van shuttle going that day back and forth to get you up the hill. If it's a nice day, most people just walk, but we have the van shuttle in case we get some inclement weather. Otherwise, in North, people park at Millette Hall. On South Quad and Met Quads and the South areas, they park in the Campus Avenue parking garage or in Heritage Commons. In East Quad, they park in the North Campus parking garage, which is, again, right across the street. So parking is pretty well spread out. It's free and doesn't require a permit for Thursday, August 23rd. Anything special about President's Withrow since not on move-in page? Okay, well, for those of you moving into President's and Withrow, I'm going to be adding maps for you, and it's basically going to be integrated into the North area maps, and you'll see where your driving path should be to get to the where physical facility staff will help you unload. Otherwise, no special considerations. The buildings are looking great and are ready to open shortly. In fact, our staff just got occupancy, so we're looking forward to opening those beautiful new buildings.
Okay, so a question about ordering, if you've ordered the wall putty, the sticky putty from Miami, from us, through the housing contract, that's the service we provide, how will you get it? So if you have ordered that, that will be available when you check in the residence hall. When your students are checking in, the staff will have that and give it to you at that point, as well as the S-hooks, if you ordered those, the molding hooks. If you ordered that, they'll get them at that point as well. And just kind of going along with that, if you ordered any of the linen sets, the linens, the comforter, the memory foam, those items, they will be already in your room for you in a box. So that will actually be in your room waiting for you. All right. Any special instructions for early move-in, for orientation, pre-semester programs? I don't know, Rob.
I would say for those of you participating in the orientation, the pre-semester programs, you'll receive an email from the program with your instructions. So because there are so many different programs, I don't want to comment on any one of them because I don't want to give you the wrong date and time. But you should reach out to the entity that's overseeing your pre-semester program, and they'll make sure you have the information for early move-in. You know, if you do move in early, there are some things that won't be going on that day. Obviously, we won't have the police presence and the physical facility staff presence. All the upper class students helping for move-in won't be there if you arrive early. So the benefit is that you might encounter less traffic, but the liability is that you don't get some of those that assistance on move-in day. Brian, there's a question here. Is it okay to move in earlier than the assigned time? Oh, that's for on the day of move-in. Yes, it is okay to do that. We give that guideline, and for the most part, people adhere to the guidelines on their 2-hour move-in timeline during the day. But if you're going to be a little bit before that or a little bit after that, or you need extra travel time, you are fine to move in at some other time during the day. But we appreciate it because most people adhere to the times, and it really makes the day go much better. You'll notice on those times that we have it scheduled through till 3 p.m. And then anybody's arriving, 3 p.m. Anyone who really, from my experience all these years, if you pull into town at 3 p.m., you're going to drive straight up to your residence hall, right up to the front door, and unload because all the traffic has died down by the mid to late afternoon. There's a question here about when do meal plans start?
All right, so meal plans will begin at lunch on your move-in day. So if you're arriving on Wednesday, if you're in one of the halls moving into Wednesday, your meal plan would begin on Wednesday and lunch on Thursday for the rest of everyone else. That is for the buffet part of your meal plan. So your dining dollar portion of the plan, that will actually be active pretty much, I think they start typically, they're enabled probably Monday or so of that week that you would move in. But since you're not here, you're not using it. But those accounts actually get turned on. And I suppose if you were visiting town, you could probably use those dining dollars. But the main part of the meal plan is going to kick in on your move-in day at lunchtime. All right, so a question about moving in early. If you need to pay the per night fee for how long. So that is that if you are part of a group coming back early, or you have a particular travel need to come back early and you're approved for that, there is a daily charge for that, and you would pay that for the days prior to your official move-in day. So, for example, if you were in Emerson and Hahn, you would pay.
You wouldn't have to pay.
If you came back on Tuesday, you would have to pay, but Wednesday is not a charge. For other halls that are moving in on Thursday, if you needed to come back a day early on Wednesday, you would pay for that one night for Wednesday for that. A question of, is a safe recommended? You could certainly bring one if you'd like to. I don't know that many students do that. It's not something we hear about often. Our residence halls, of course, we have the electronic locks on the doors, and so the rooms stay fairly secure. But I don't know, Rob, if you have much sense.
It's not a common practice. Our health services center began encouraging students who, in particular, bring medication that's prescribed by a physician, that they started to recommend that they bring a little lockbox or a safe to keep that from falling into the wrong hands. So I've seen that on a maybe a small uptick, but it's not a common practice campus-wide. We do recommend that students keep valuables, out of plain sight and tucked away so they don't walk away or they don't get, picked up by someone passing through the hallway. But for the most part, students don't bring or use a safe in the room.
All right, so question about will dumpsters be available for early move-in? Yes, we will always have dumpsters available to collect that the trash and recycling, and we appreciate you taking those items into those locations. How do students pay for MU Bucks? So again, MU Bucks is the off-campus debit account that you would still use your ID card for, and it is an opportunity to select that on your housing contract. So that is actually something that if you have signed up for MU Bucks, you should be getting some information from the MU Bucks company. So Miami University doesn't actually charge you for this, it's MU Bucks. And so I know they came and got the list of everyone who'd signed up for it just last week, so you should be receiving notice from them, some type of invoice from them asking you to pay if you'd like to continue doing that, and then they would load the money on and you'd be able to use it on your card. If you have any questions about that, you could go on the MU Bucks website, which is, I believe it's mubucks.com. At least you could Google MU Bucks and get specifically there and find their contact information as well if you wanted to ask details about that. And also a question about microwaves, and the maximum wattage approved for microwaves in the residence halls is 700 watts. So we ask that you do get a microwave that's 700 watts or less.
All right, for package pickup on move-in day at Schreiber, parking and or carts available to get packaged to cars. Well, that's a good one. I don't know, quite honestly. I don't often see students using carts, so I don't think they provide them. There is a parking lot behind the Schreiber Center, and it has some short-term parking. So if you do need to carry boxes from the package center to the back parking lot, it's a short walk around. I would reach out to the mailroom to see if you've sent a lot of big boxes to the mailroom. You should maybe contact them and see if they're going to be providing that. Brian,
yeah, we do. We have a little bit of additional information here. Some bullet points that might be helpful. That the package center will begin package services for incoming students on Monday, August 13th. So if you're having anything shipped to your student, they ask that you please not send anything prior to August 13th, if at all possible. Your students will receive an email or text to retrieve their packages. Smaller packages that fit in the center's locker system will be placed there for 24 hours and then moved to the back office. So for those of you not familiar, we do have a really neat smart locker system on campus with the packages. Lots of banks of lockers in the package center that they put the smaller packages in. You get a code, your student gets a code, they are able to then go and access that and get the package out pretty quickly. It's a really neat process. And again, August 13th is the first point at which students could begin to actually pick up their packages if they get them. I'm just kind of scrolling through here, some talking points. Those are 24-hour lockers as well. So there is 24 hours a day access to that. All right.
All right. Question about confirming that Emerson moved in on the 22nd and not the 23rd. That is correct. I can confirm that Emerson and Hahn Halls are the two halls that have opening a day early on the 22nd. Now, if you've already made arrangements to arrive on the 23rd, not a problem. That'll be fine. But you can arrive on the 22nd without paying the fee in those two buildings. And then we'll have some activities just for those students that night, and then they'll do all of the welcome weekend stuff with everybody starting on the 23rd. Question here about S-hooks and putty. Are they available for purchase on move-in day, or are they still available to order online? I know that they are available in the campus store in the Shriver Center, so that's probably the most convenient place to get them on campus. Mm-hmm. Can you order them online at this point?
I believe that those are done, and that's because we placed the orders for the...
Yeah. So you're not able to order those online at this point.
But we do sell them in the store on campus. Yep. All right. Question about guest meals for family. If you've got your student has the Diplomat meal plan with guest meals on it, you can absolutely use those guest buffet meals for family members on move-in day if you like. If you go to a buffet location, if you go to a location that is not a buffet, like the Armstrong Student Center or Starbucks or something like that, you could use your declining balance dollars for your family members as well. Are area hotels available that we would recommend? Well, there are hotels in Oxford. They may be full. So if you're not able to find a hotel in Oxford, such as the Markham Hotel, there's others in town. Houston Woods is located nearby, as well as you may want to look at Hamilton and northern suburbs of Cincinnati if you're looking for hotels for move-in.
I can't advocate for anyone in particular, but I know that a lot of parents are now looking to Airbnb, and there's more and more local residents in Oxford who are making rooms and spaces available through Airbnb.
We've got a question about wireless printers, and if there's a preference between wireless and wired, and the answer is yes. They need to be wired. That our IT folks ask that students not have, or if you have a wireless printer, that the wireless feature not be enacted, that it be turned off, because it can cause interference with the network.
Yeah, in essence, those wireless printers are a wireless access point, and they interfere with the wireless access points that we have throughout the residence halls. And as you'd imagine, when you have 250 people doing their studying all at the same time, they can put a strain on the wireless system, and then those printers compromise that. So they can bring the printers with wireless, just they push one button, it turns it off, they use the cord to print, and that does the trick.
Mm-hmm. All right, and this is our last question. Maybe it's our last question, which is when can students purchase and or pick up their textbooks? So the question of when can they purchase them could be now, I believe. That should be online. So if you're buying them through the university, we do partner with a company called eCampus. It's a really neat partnership that we've got. So you could actually go online through the bookstore website, the Miami University Bookstore, find that, order your books. It's going to basically, it'll know what classes you have, and you can connect it that way and order those. They should be available. I think that they ship. You can choose if it's shipped to your home or if it comes to campus. It's free shipping. So that's really dependent upon I think how you place your order and what options you choose of where it gets delivered and when. Okay. Any others? Well, great questions.
All right.
Yeah. So.
What else do you want to say, Brian?
Well, we're excited for everyone to arrive, and thank you all for taking the time to listen to us today with your questions. And
if you looked at the campus right now, you'd say, whoa, they're not ready, because we've still got lots of construction going on and streets closed and getting paved, but we anticipate all that will be cleaned up and ready to go by the 23rd, and we're not anticipating any local traffic problems like we had a couple of years ago, so that should all be smooth sailing. All right, well, if you have other questions, we might have one coming in, but if you have other questions, feel free to email home@miamioh.edu, that's Brian's office, or you can email residencelife@miamioh.edu, And if you ask us one question and it belongs to the other office, we'll make sure the right person gets it. But there is a web page that kind of designates what our two offices does. Again, there'll be a recording of this posted on the Family and Parents website. Let's see, we got one more question.
Are there activities planned for students on Friday, or will parents be able to spend more time with them on that day?
All right, so the question came in, are there activities on Friday? Will parents be able to spend time with students on Friday? I can give you a general sense of what goes on Friday and what parents are invited to. Now, let me start by saying most parents will drop off and leave town, head out on Thursday. So there are not a lot of parents, and there's not any sort of parents programs going on Friday or through the weekend. But if your schedule is such that you choose to say, I'll tell you what's going on. First thing on Friday morning is our university convocation. So the entire class will meet all together, and they'll be greeted by the president and the president's cabinet. We have our speaker for our summer reading program. The mayor of Oxford will speak. The student body president will speak. The Glee Club will sing a tune or two. So it's a great outdoor event, and if you're around, you are welcome to join that. In all likelihood, your student will be sitting with his or her building in her corridor with their new friends. It's not often that they're sitting with parents, but you are absolutely welcome to join us for that event. They'll move from that to their summer reading program discussion groups, and those are only for students, so parents aren't necessarily invited to those, sorry. Then many students will have academic kickoff events at the end of that morning. That afternoon, they're on the Welcome Week schedule. There are some optional things, so students will be able to look on the schedule and choose some things. So if you're still in town and you want to hang out with your student Friday for lunch and afternoon, that would be fine as well. Some of the Living Learning communities have some events on Friday, and then Friday night there are more campus-wide social activities that your students will want to participate in. When you were here for orientation, when your student was here for orientation, they uploaded an app to their phone. Mark, you remember the name of the app? Miami University Events. I thought it had some fancy name, but there it is, Miami University Events, and that's where the orientation schedule was for those of you who attended orientation this summer. The Welcome Week and the first 50 days schedule will also be posted to that app. So that's how students will know what they're doing through the whole weekend. There's a combination of orientation type events, social events, educational things. We'll have the fire safety fairs. We'll have our large It's On Us program in Millett Hall where we talk about sexual and interpersonal violence, alcohol use, and many other topics. So you can get more details about that by looking at that app. All right. Well, we've covered all that. Have there been other questions?
We've got a few more.
Okay, good.
So there's a question about dropping off supplies and materials specifically related to the art and architecture area. And so for that, I would suggest checking out their website, finding contact information for the department, and asking them that question. We've got a question about refrigerators in Thompson, that they weren't listed on the website. And believe it or not, that's something I found out about, and we adjusted this morning. So if you refresh that housing website, you should probably see it. But even if it isn't showing up, I want to confirm that all of our student rooms have a mini fridge provided, and also every room has air conditioning. Some halls might be, Thompson, for example, has window air conditioners, and some have central air, but every hall, every room has some kind of air conditioning and a refrigerator. Question also about Moolah, when that gets loaded onto the cards, and that should be any day now that'll be loading in. There's some process that has to kick off for that to happen, but as long as you're seeing it correctly on your bill, that Moolah is on there, then you should be good to go and know that that will be loading on here, should be within a couple days. And also Wi-Fi. We do have Miami University wireless internet, pretty much everywhere you can go, inside and outside of buildings on campus. And there's just one access to that, and that is your student's unique ID and their password. So that's the same password and email address that they'll use for their email, for their all of the university services, anything they're logging in with an account for Miami, it's the same one that you would log into. So if you save it on your device, it doesn't matter which building you go into or where you go, it's always going to connect on there and work.
A bit of advice for students that I'll share with you all today is, while students are in their room with their laptops, my advice is that they plug it in using an Ethernet cord. A common concern that students have is the speed of the wireless, and even though our colleagues in IT services have done all sorts of measures to increase the bandwidth, including using fiber optics and all sorts of rerouting of network space in the evenings in the residential networks, it's still tight because there's more and more content that they're downloading and more content that they're streaming, and that requires a lot of stuff, a lot of bandwidth. So for students who take the simple step, they're sitting on their bed, they're watching a TV show or Netflix or whatever, the student who plugs in through an Ethernet cord is never going to have any speed problems at all. It's only at those peak times where your screen might spin for a half a second before you get connected.
And I would just add to that if your student is someone who maybe they like to stream a whole lot of videos or particular video games and gaming and some things like that might use excessive amount of bandwidth, or just more than normal. We do have a service called ResNet Turbo that is $85 a semester that basically lets them get a significant increase in what their bandwidth would be. If that's something you're interested in, you on the Home Office website under residential services, you could read about it, and that's something you could sign up for if that were to be a concern. We have one other question about should you find a mentor to mentor your student? Should they find one within their school or somebody that's maybe a similar major or a similar academic division? I would say that's a great idea.
I would say absolutely yes. So for certain populations of students, there are formal programs to find mentors. But the fact of the matter is, most students will connect with somebody. In some cases, it's their professors. In some cases, it's academic advisors through their college or their department. Many students connect well with the residence life staff. Everyone will have an RA. There are resident directors who live in the buildings, and they connect well with students and know a lot about the campus and have good resources and good advice. So yes, I think that's something worth talking about, and then worth calling about a week or two into the semester is with who have you connected? Have you found upper class students? Students find a lot of upper class students either through their residence halls, because many of our halls are mixed, but also through student organizations, through classes. There are all sorts of ways that they can be connected. If you're concerned about your students' ability to connect to that, I would start with talking with them about it and helping them come up with strategies on how they would connect with someone or find someone. And if that doesn't seem to be working, give a call or shoot an email to your student's resident director, and they can talk about ways that maybe they can help intervene to get your student connected on campus.
All right, we have another question about early move-in. And if you request to come back early, what time on that day? So if you request to come back one day early, what time on that day can you arrive? You could actually really arrive at any point. There's no limit. It's any time that day. You probably, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock is a great time to come back. But if you needed to come back at 5 o'clock that morning, your card will work. It would let you in. The important thing about early arrivals, though, if you do move in a day early, is that on the official move-in day, make sure that you need to go back to the check-in station in your residence hall, connect with the staff there, get your move-in packet, and get that important information from the residence life staff. So that's the most important part if you are coming back early, that you do that. And we've got one more about ResNet Turbo. And that is that if you've signed up for it, is how do you access that? And there should be just instructions for how to do that. I believe that actually what happens really is just that the IT department knows who has it, and so they enable additional bandwidth for you based on where you live.
Because as you remember, when you click MU Wireless, the student has to log in. So through that process, the system might automatically know, oh, this is someone who signed up for ResNet Turbo, and they'll get that access in the residence halls.
Couple more questions. We do not provide Ethernet cords, so for plugging into the Ethernet cable, you can purchase one at the bookstore, at the campus store if you'd like, but we don't automatically provide those. And question about what is a UL approved circuit breaker. So any appliance or any electrical item that you would bring, we do ask that it has the UL approved mark on it. So, if you look at any of the electric items that you might have, you'd see a little UL with a circle around it. That's Underwriter Laboratories, which means it's been tested and that it's supposedly safe, right? So you'll want to look for that little symbol on any electrical device. That's specific, especially surge protectors is one, but really any electrical item that you have on campus should bear the UL.
So I'm glad that question got asked, because it's just a reminder to everyone to not bring an extension cord. Even a small, thin one, just to get you a couple extra feet, do not bring it. They are a fire risk. Sometimes students will plug them in and tuck them behind their bed, and we'll never know about it. And that's not, that makes the situation worse. So in all of our residence halls, there are ample outlets in the rooms. But if you feel the need, you can bring a surge protector, but make sure it's one of those surge protectors that has the fuse built in, and you'll know that because it'll have the light that turns on and the switch that turns on. Those generally have the fuse built in.
All right, we have a question about the package center, and basically which items are delivered to the residence halls versus the package center, and any letter in an envelope, basically, is something that would be delivered to your student's mailbox in the residence hall, and anything that is basically not a magazine or an envelope is going to go to the package center, and you'll be notified that that's available, and then again, that is open 24 hours, so your student would have access to that. They could use the code that they get in their notification to access the locker to get it. They could even give that code to a friend if they wanted to let the friend pick up the item for them if they were not able to. If there's any odd or very oversized packages, those may not fit in the lockers, and those may be just at the desk at the package center.
Really, the most important part of that package system is that the student has to respond within 24 hours so they can use the convenience of the locker system. Otherwise, it gets removed from the locker and put behind the desk, as Brian mentioned earlier. So as soon as that student gets that email, they should get over to the package center.
And we have another question about early arrivals. And in addition to someone who might need to come back early for travel purposes, there also are a number of group activities and group things going on campus, such as Miami Bound, band, the different sports teams. If your student is part of a group who has a need to be back early, that group will actually submit the request for the students to come back early, and then your students should get notification of that. And those are coming in as we speak. Those approvals are coming through. So as long as you have that information, that would tell you when your student would be approved to move in early based on their group activity.
And they'll move into their room.
Yes, so to Mark's point, and that's for their own room, unless they're told otherwise. If for some reason there was a very special situation where somebody was maybe going to a temporary room, they would be told that. But unless that has occurred, everyone's going to their own room on those days when they arrive early.
Yeah, if the student is in a group, they're in the band, they're in ROTC, they're in one of these groups that knows they're coming back early, and they don't receive that notification, they should first start with the contacts in that program rather than contacting the home office, because for those groups, the access is granted through the program, not through individuals requesting the access. All right, Mark, any more?
Okay. Nope.
All right, well.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
We've appreciated your questions.
Yeah.
Again, this is going to be posted, and you know the emails and the website, so feel free to contact us if you have other questions. And we're looking forward to your safe arrival on campus in just a few weeks.